All right, welcome everybody. Thank you for tuning in this afternoon. My name is Winnie, and I'm excited that you guys could join us. Um, the topic that we're going to be talking about today is family relationships and parenting, but we're going to be specifically looking at these dynamics within Haitian American communities. So, to help me talk about family relationships and parenting within um, Haitian American families today is my longtime friend Mildred. Hi, Mildred. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Winnie. Such an
Yeah,
honor to
I'm,
be here with you.
I am so excited that you could join me today. For those of you watching who don't know Mildred, she is a longtime friend of mine. She's a mom. She's a Haitian American as myself, and she was also raised in a traditional Haitian home. So, the purpose of today's discussion is to really talk about some of the things that occur within Haitian American homes that we can learn from. And I hope that today's discussion is educational for a lot of people. This is not a therapy session. Um, and so, as such, I would like to ask you viewers to leave your thoughts, your comments, your reactions in the comments below, so you can be a part of the conversation as well, so it can be even more enriching. Um, so, as everybody knows, the family is a very complex system, and families today definitely look different than they did a long time ago. So, the traditional family of having a mom and dad and the kids is pretty much um, changing now. We have a lot of different families where children are being raised by their grandparents, and we have children in foster families, and we also have families where there are two moms and two dads, and sometimes it's a single mom and sometimes it's a single dad. So even though the traditional family itself has been changing, I think that at the end of the day, the core of the family has still remained the same, in the sense that when we are looking to parent our own children, it is very important that we look into our own backgrounds and into our own families of origin, so we can try to figure out um, some of the things that we may want to use in our parenting of our children today, and also kind of figure out which things that we learn from our parents that we don't want to pass down. So, with that said, I'm going to start the discussion by talking a little bit about parenting styles. So, Mildred and I talked about this a little bit. Many of you may be familiar with Diana Baumrind. She was a clinical psychologist who did a lot of research into parenting styles, and she came up with different parenting styles that she felt like parents kind of use. And the parenting style that the specific parenting style that a parent used um, kind of determined how that child was going to grow up and how that child would turn out in adulthood. And they've also used her research to kind of figure out which one of these parenting styles is the best to use. So the four common parenting styles are the authoritarian, which is basically the parenting style which is more about giving orders, and the authoritarian parent will be very demanding and unresponsive. And then you have the authoritative parenting style, which is about giving choices. So that parent is demanding but responsive at the same time. And then you have the uninvolved parent, which is basically the parent who gives up. So they're not demanding and they're not responsive. So they kind of let the child do whatever the child wants to do. And then the last one is the permissive parent. And that parent is not demanding but responsive. So this is the parent who you could say gives in a lot to what the child wants. So that being said, Mildred, which type of parent do you feel like your parents were?
Very much so authoritarian parents that I have. Um, yeah, it kind of created in me growing up shy, timid,
Hmm.
very low self-esteem. But it wasn't until I grew older I realized, wait a minute, I'm not shy. I'm not
Hmm.
timid at all. But it was that, high demands were made out of you and you were brushed off really quickly. Do
Hmm.
as I say or else. You didn't
Hmm.
have to really have a safe room to really be yourself and be free and be able to have vocal and be able to talk your emotions and feelings. That was not allowed
Hmm.
because you can't reason with that. It's like,
Hmm.
this is what goes, that's it. You don't
Hmm.
question that. So that was the kind of atmosphere that I was rearing.
Hmm.
Well, what
Um,
was it like for you?
well, my parents, I think, were a combination of authoritarian and au- authoritative, especially with my dad. So my dad was more the authoritarian. So you had to pretty much follow orders, no questions asked. And then my mom was more the parent who was like, well, I'll give you choices, I'll talk to you about it. So I think that in a way, having those two parenting styles, I think was very helpful for me to kind of see the difference, in one parent being more authoritarian and then the other parent being more authoritative. So I think it was um, kind of a balance, I guess. Which type of parent do you think you are?
I'm more of a little bit authoritative and also permissive. Um, my husband helped me to stay in being authoritative because sometimes
Mhm,
I would let the boys have their way a little
mhm,
bit, and he helped me with that a lot. I think I lean towards the permissive kind because I did not want to be modeled what I had. So
mhm,
I wanted my kids to experience a healthy environment where they can thrive and explain themselves and have choices and
mhm,
be able to be a kid and be able to say, Mommy, that's not okay. My feelings are
mhm.
hurt because of X, Y, and Z. So for me, it's like I'm a little bit of both, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think that that makes a lot of sense to me because a lot of times we look at our parents and the way that we were raised, and we are often like, well, I don't want to be like my parents. I want to do things differently, and I don't want to do this or I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
So I think sometimes, and this is kind of what you touched on, is that since your parents were very authoritarian and you felt like you couldn't talk to them, and you felt like it was more about you following orders than building that relationship, then you felt like you needed that to be different with your own children. Um, for me, I think I want to be more of an authoritative parent. Of course, my daughter is only 2, so I haven't really gotten the chance yet to figure out, which parenting style that I use most of the time. Um, but I think that I'm gonna lean more towards the authoritative one in terms of giving choices and then following that with building a relationship with her. Um, Lee says she uses authoritative and permissive methods. So that I think is a method that works for a lot of people when it's not either or. And again, parenting I think kind of falls on the spectrum where you can't really stay at one end all the time. There
Exactly.
has to be like a little bit of a give and take. All right, so we're gonna move on to talking about family values. Um, all right. So, what value do you feel like your family placed on success?
Success wasn't really, I don't want to say really talked about openly. This is the pathway to success. What I gathered from what I could remember, success is equivalent to having an education.
Mm.
You
Mhm.
have to go to school and become somebody, then you will be successful. That was the mantra in the home. It
Mhm.
was very like, and we're gonna touch education in a little bit. But yeah, success was that was success to them is to leave this town,
Mhm.
become somebody great. I still don't know what that is,
Mhm.
but that's what success was in our home.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's very interesting. Because I really feel like my parents and my family in general, extended as well, um, put an emphasis on success in terms of, um, you have to excel at what you do. So
mm,
success wasn't necessarily, us having the big homes and the nice cars and like all these flashy things. It was more about, if you choose to do this, then you need to do it well and you need to excel at that, so you can, have the success that you want. Um, Lee says that she relied on her son's personality and what he needed to rear him. So going back to the parenting styles, I
mhm.
think that's very very
Great.
important. And
Yeah.
even when we're talking about values, because, your children's personalities are going to be very important, in that as well. We have to take that into consideration. And, Steph says 99% of Haitian parents are authoritarian parents, which is not necessarily bad, but sometimes misguided, and it's almost always not intentional. And, I would agree with that.
I totally do. I,
Mhm.
I can back that up with one thing is I think that's what they know, what they call severe parenting. I'm strict with my kid because I want them to be X, Y, and Z.
Right. You
My
want them to be successful,
uh
so you're going to be really strict with them. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that's just my opinion. I believe in the culture of the Haitian culture. There's not this thing where where the kid is allowed to I don't know, really explain themselves to the parent without it seeming you're talking back. You like that
Mhm.
kind of thing. It's like I want to say it's like a little bit negative to really say that I'm feeling X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
You don't talk about your, at least in my
Yeah.
home, you
Yeah.
don't talk about your emotions.
Feelings aren't talked
Good.
about.
I pay for your school. I pay for you to do this, that. What problems do you have, child?
Right.
So it
Right.
wasn't, but there's more to that
Mhm.
as I'm learning as a parent now, there's more to provide the
Mhm.
physical aspect of things. There's also
Mhm.
providing emotional aspect of things. And I think
Mhm.
that lacks in my home. I'm not speaking for everybody's, Haitian community, but what
Right.
I
But that's
experienced.
like the experience that you had. Mhm. Um, Steph says kids are pretty much seen more as properties in the best way possible. And, I think that's a very good way to, put it, because it's usually like, okay, so you're my child. I brought you into this world. I'm gonna give you, everything that you need physically. So I'm gonna give you a good home. I'm gonna give you food. I'm gonna put clothes on your back. I'm gonna give you shoes and all of these things. And you're expected to be okay. And
Yeah.
the emotional part of that, tends to be missing. What values do you feel like your parents placed on financial stability?
Um, that's another thing. I don't think it was ever explained in a way, well, this is what financial stability looks like. To
Mm-hmm.
me, what I gathered, it was more like this is what financial stability does not look like.
Mm-hmm.
Let me explain. I came from a household where the breadwinner was my father. And in the home, I feel like since he was the breadwinner, my mom didn't have a much say so in what goes on.
Mm-hmm.
And the finances was always like he made the decision, like any and everything. I gathered from that, okay, wait a minute. I need as a woman, plus I'm sidetracking a little bit.
Oh no, you're
I'm not saying for like the whole Haitian community, but where the environment I grew in, it was very much so misogynist. So I didn't like that as a kid. I'm like, okay, for me to have independent and be stable and be able to have a voice, I need financial stability because I don't want
mm-hmm.
this, I want that. So it wasn't really discussed. Oh, here's point A, point B, point Z. This is what you do, and you invest your money, and this is how you. It wasn't like that. It was what I witnessed, and then I'm like, no, I want X, Y, and Z for me. I don't know how that was like for you, but that was my take.
Mm-hmm. I don't think that we had conversations about, like this is how you make money. And all of that. It was more about being good stewards of what we had. So if they gave us money, we were expected to take care of the money and spend it wisely. All of that. And I can remember them having conversations with us about saving um, our money and not spending it on things that were useless and things like that. So I think in that sense, it was very good for us to have these conversations about being good stewards, even though it wasn't necessarily about how to go out there and make money per se.
Mm-hmm.
Lee says her parents tried to have a balance between Haitian culture and American culture. We had diplomacy in our house. They created a speak up environment. We can request family meetings. And I'm glad that Lise brought up family meetings in her comment because that's something that I'm going to talk about a little bit more later on. What about education? You mentioned that earlier. What values did your parents place on education?
When you have education, you've made it in life. Basically, it's a must. You have
Mhm.
to be educated, and we're going to talk about this soon too. The three career choices that you have from a Haitian household. There might be more now, but growing up, you would either become a lawyer,
A doctor.
a doctor, or possibly an engineer. Those top three were in my home, or also like a business mogul or something like that. Create
Mhm.
your own business. And I remember as a kid, my father would say, "Oh, wouldn't that be nice if I could show up in your office and on your door it would be pediatric something, Dr. Milk." And like he would envision those dreams for me, and I'm like,
That's not what you want. That's not what I want.
I remember one day I told him, I came home one day, I said, Dad, I'm gonna be a missionary one day. He frowned down upon us like, no, you don't, that's not an education. Like you
Mhm.
no, what are you
That's
talking
not a
about?
career.
No, that's not a career. And I was like, okay, I guess that's what I'm supposed to do. I don't know. But
Mhm.
yeah, education is very important. I remember my dad used to tell me my grandmother, she didn't go to school, but she knew the value of education.
Mhm.
Like she would get up early and wake up the kids before the break of dawn so they can revise their lesson before going to school. Even though she didn't know how to read herself, but she knows how important that was to be able to read and write and also articulate and explain yourself. So education is, I would say, huge in any Haitian household. Like you
Mhm.
have to have
Mhm.
some level of education.
Steph says education is your only job in a Haitian household, and it's
Bingo.
true. You go to school, that is your only job. So
Yeah.
in my family, education was highly valued, even now. And I feel like sometimes, especially with my dad, even if you were to get the highest degree in your career field, he would feel like there is something else that
You can add to that.
you still need to learn. Like you could get another degree on how to be like the best person in life or something like that. Like there's always something more that you can learn. And I think the other thing about education in my family and a lot of Haitian families, I think, is that sometimes education is not just about school. It's about um, becoming a better version of you. So
Mhm.
learning it's about having a hunger for learning. Again, like Steph said, that was our only job. Like you went to school, you learned, you needed to learn how to be a critical thinker, so you could be an educated person.
Yeah.
Um, the next value that we're going to talk about is about children. What values do you feel like your parents placed on the ability for you to have children?
I used to hear, not from my parents, but and other families around me that I grew up around. They would say children, or I'm trying to translate, by the way, you probably know where I'm going with this. Children are the wealth of the parent. I'm not sure exactly how to translate. Help me, because I can
Simone
translate.
Simone said bien malheureux, right?
Yes,
So basically having children is kind of like the prize. Like if you have children, then you're basically rich.
yes.
And while we're talking about children, I want to circle back to the education piece because Elise said something that I think is very important, and it's how a lot of Haitian parents view it is that her parents told her that her and her siblings had to do better than they did in every facet.
Hmm.
So she tells her son the same, that he has to go further in education and make more money than she did. So I think going back to the conversation about having children, that's kind of how Haitian parents tend to see it. So if we made, $20,000 a year, then when I have children, I want them to make $35,000
Yep.
a year, and so on and so forth. If I only had a high school education, then I would want my children to surpass me and go even further.
Mhm.
So did you ever feel like your parents kind of ever pressured you to have children of your own?
I don't think I got to that point because I have a kid at an early age. I was 27, 22, 22. So
That's not
no,
early. Come on.
for my parents, that was really early. So
That's true.
that's really early, very early. It was like almost like I was a teenager, like a teen
Yeah,
pregnant.
because you had to be like 35 or 40
Yes,
years old before
yes,
you would be ready to start having children.
absolutely. But no, I didn't get that pressure at all. I didn't get the chance. I was way ahead of them in that aspect. So
Yeah, they never pressured us to have children, and it's funny because I can remember when um, my older brother got married, and someone at his church had asked him and his wife if they were planning on having children anytime soon and things like that. And my dad was around when that lady asked them that question, and my dad was like, what? Like, why are you asking them, if they're gonna have children anytime soon? Like, is this what you would want to see for them and stuff? And just and my brother might have been like I don't know, like 24, 25 at that point. But seeing my dad freak out because someone asked him, when were you gonna start having children? It was like, whoa, like you don't ask my kids when they're gonna have children. Lee says there was no pressure to have children, but our grandma, that's another story. And I can attest to that because Lisa's grandmother is also my grandmother. So she always wants grandbabies because she wants to count her grandchildren and all of that. Steph says for a Haitian household, having a kid at 22 is like being 16 and pregnant.
Yes.
And
Yes.
Fiona says facts, and then you reach 30s and they are freaking out. And that's
Yes.
true too.
That is so true, Fiona.
Like, in your mid 30s, heading into your 40s, and you still don't have any children, and they're like, am I gonna be a grandparent? Like, when am I gonna be a grandparent? Like, I want to hold a baby too, and all of that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And Sandra says that she can attest to that as well. All right, so we're gonna move on a little bit from talking about children to spiritual life. What value did your parents place on spirituality?
Well, I was raised Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
We were at church probably twice during the week. Early Sunday morning mass, which I hated as a kid. At 6 in the morning, you going to church. No,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a great thing. But
Mm-hmm.
I endured those times. But we were brought up to be great Catholic kids.
Mm-hmm.
It was much more like, I guess, a culture, because it was really not relational aspect of it, but it was we were taught to go to church, do good things, be good Catholic kids.
Mm-hmm.
That was that for me.
Yeah, same here. Spiritual life was highly valued. It was like the number one thing. You had to go to church every Sunday, midweek services, and all of that. And God forbid you woke up one day and you decided, I don't feel like going to church today. No, you are going to church. Like
There
it
is no
doesn't
such
matter.
thing.
It doesn't matter. You are going to church. Danny says we lived at church, and that is so true. That is so true. Like we prayed about everything. You have a headache, you pray. You run into something and you hurt your toes, you prayed about that. You prayed about everything, and everything was about God and spirituality and church. What about your heritage? What value do you feel like your parents placed on that?
um that's something that was never, so I really can't pinpoint what it is exactly. I couldn't think of anything about my
Mhm,
heritage. The most important thing, like I could think right now, I've been thinking about this for a while. The important is like mostly was for me about family.
mhm,
I have like such a deep rooted longing to always be close to family, close knit
mhm,
family, even distant cousins, uh, to keep the family value
right,
going and keep the family memories alive. That was something that was really passed down from my mom and my dad,
mhm,
building memories, that kind of stuff. But other than that, that was a really tough one to really
mhm,
hold. I couldn't really think of anything.
mhm. Yeah, ours was kind of similar in that we needed to remember who we were and where we came from. So even now, we still get talks about our family and like the things that our family have gone through, the things that family members have overcome, and all of that. And we were encouraged to connect with every family member that we could find, extended families. And this is something that sometimes I think about it and I laugh because I can remember my parents just kind of introducing us to family members that were like um, second cousins or third cousins or whatever removed, and it was like this is your family,
Yeah.
and that's it. So you need to figure out how to build a relationship with
Right.
that family member, and if you didn't call uncle so and so or cousin so and so, it was like, you have to talk to your family. Like that's your family. So they were really really big about that. How do you feel about work ethic? What kind of values that they place on that?
Oh, my father believed in working hard. He would
Hmm.
say he would make us do like strenuous hard work for a girl at that time because he would say, "Oh, if you ever go to the United States, you would have to work twice as hard to be somebody because nothing is
Hmm.
going to be given to you." At
Hmm.
a young age, he had a Photoshop, a photo studio.
Hmm.
I would
I
work
remember
there
that.
for free on the weekend. I never got paid, but I worked from like I would open the store early in the morning on Saturdays, and I would work probably 12-hour shift. That's child
Hmm.
labor. But I
Hmm.
worked I worked with him for quite some time. But it yeah, he believed in hard working and he instilled that in me.
Mhm, mhm. And, Danny says that laziness is basically a sin in our culture, and I mean,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
I think that's the best way to put it. When you wake up in the morning, I mean, you gotta get your chores done, you gotta do stuff, and if it means that, you're gonna work for free, then so be it. And, going back to you saying you worked at your dad's shop for free, I can actually kinda hear your dad and, my dad even saying, "Well, you're not working for free because I'm providing for you. So you live in this house. I'm paying for your school. I'm paying for your food. I'm paying for everything. So you need to work. Like, what do you mean you need to get paid? This
You're
was
right.
not, yeah, like this wasn't something um that you could talk about. Like you couldn't demand to be paid.
No.
Lee says that she doesn't know about her younger siblings, but the three oldest ones didn't sleep in. We did labor. Fiona says our childhood is borderline child labor, but loves it. And I think that for me that really instilled in me the value of hard work, and
Mhm.
not just hard work, but doing your work with integrity,
Mm.
excelling at what you do, and being honest about it. So when you work hard and you're not just kind of waiting around for somebody to give you a handout, or you're not going to go steal for it, that teaches you about the value of honest hard work. So I really love that. You mentioned gender a little bit in what you were saying because you said um, you girls had to work hard. So I'm curious about how you felt that your parents viewed gender.
Okay, this is okay. Brace yourself. I grew up. My dad had two girls. It was just us two girls.
Hmm.
I grew up hearing he would like not mention it intentionally, but he would say, I wish I had a boy in the home." And during the summer months, my cousins would come over and spend some time with us. The boy cousins, they would get treated better than the girl cousins than us. Like they
Hmm.
would have dinner with my dad at the table, which is a big no-no for us.
Hmm.
Um, um, they can walk up to my dad and make demands, and we can't do that. They were favored and they were just praised. He would say, "You should do this for so and so because he's a man." Like,
Hmm.
and I don't think he understand the impact that may have, but I guess that's how he was brought up, and that's he was just passing that along. So we were viewed as girls in the home less of in a way than the boys did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you were as a woman, you were I was taught by my dad mostly be seen and not be heard type of thing.
Mm-hmm. So
Understand?
kind of like being a second class citizen almost.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Yeah, and that did not sit well with me. I remember exactly how I knew how in depth it was as we got older, and I was having a conversation with one of my cousin, and he said to me, "Since when were you a feminist?" And I was like, "Class." I'm like, "Wait a minute." Oh, I was like, "Okay, I know where that came from," because
Mm-hmm.
those months
Right.
and years of hanging around that culture.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's it was seen girls are no good, they lie and they sneaky.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they must not be trusted because they're always up to something. They
Mm-hmm.
probably on the phone with some boy somewhere doing what they shouldn't have doing, da 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 da. It
Mm-hmm.
was just like there was no trust. Whatever I said was not real. Like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you can't be telling the truth because you're a
Mm-hmm.
girl. That was the culture.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. As you know, I was the only girl. I have two brothers, and I think for me, there wasn't necessarily an emphasis on my brothers being better than me because they were boys, or that I was a lesser person because I was a girl. I
Mhm.
felt like overall, to a certain extent, we were kind of treated the same, except when it came to things that were seen as a girl's job. Because again, in the Haitian culture, I think since it's a very male dominant culture, there
Mhm.
there are jobs for women to do, and there are jobs for guys to do, and guys can't do the women's job, and women can't do the things that guys do. So one of the things that I do remember growing up is that I had to do a lot of chores when it came to like cleaning and doing the laundry and cooking and doing all of those things, when my brothers didn't have to do any of it. Like
Yep.
they could spend their entire day outside running around, hanging out with their friends and stuff.
Yep.
But me, no. I had to learn how to do all of those things. And then I also remember one time when my dad got a four-wheeler, and he was teaching my brothers how to drive it. And I was like, well, how about me? Because I would love to learn how to drive. Like, it looked really fun. And he was basically like, no, like, you're a girl. You're not going to learn how to drive a four-wheeler. And my younger brother, who's like 3.5 years younger than me, got to learn how to drive a four-wheeler. And I was like, what? Like, you're gonna let him drive, you're gonna teach him how to drive, but not me. So I remember that I made a huge deal out of it. I was not happy about it at all. And then he finally gave in, and he taught me how to drive it. But those were um the biggest things that I can remember when it came to like the gender differences. But I also want to say that even now as adults, I do tend to see that a lot within the older traditional Haitian homes, where the guys will not do female jobs. Like, they won't clean, they won't iron their clothes, you won't find them in the kitchen cooking because
Oh,
that's a woman's job. So yeah, that one was um definitely something for me, I guess.
yeah.
Um
I want to add to that just a little bit, just as you were talking. Another thing that was specific for us to do, like when you described like women's job and men's was supposed to do, I was
mhm,
told I hated to be in the kitchen. I did not want to be. I didn't want to cook. That's not
mhm,
my thing. I was told if I don't know how to cook, my husband will leave me. because I don't know how to cook. And because I used to say, well, my mom and my dad were like, you need to learn how to cook. I'm like, well, if I get married, my husband and I will be wealthy enough to go to the restaurant. We'll eat out every day.
Mhm.
I don't see what's wrong with that. Oh,
Mhm.
your husband will leave you. Matter of fact, if you have a maid, the maid will take the man because you don't know how to cook. So
Oh
my
my
value,
God.
yes, my value
Mhm.
is based on I need to be a housewife, housewoman. I
Mhm.
need to be able to do all these things and also have an education to be able to keep my man.
Mhm.
So I was
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
I guess I will not
How are
have
you
to.
gonna do it? Like, how are you gonna do all of these things? And as you're talking, I'm seeing some of the comments coming in. Um, Fiona says, oh, Steph says she thinks that it's more being submissive, which again they were doing the best that they knew how to do.
Mhm.
Fiona says, I hate this man kind of thing. And she agrees with you, Millie. As girls, we had a set of chores we had to do. The guys were taught to rely on us and get served, basically. She didn't like
Mhm.
that part because she wanted to play too. And I agree with that. Like,
Yep.
I wanted to run around too, like climb the trees and do what the boys were
You're
doing.
right.
Lee says that's interesting, Millie, because in her house it was all girls and one boy. Her dad didn't cut them any slack. He taught them how to change tires. He gave them the puberty and sex talk. That is very interesting because
Yes.
we're gonna be talking about that one a little bit later. So that's interesting that Lise got the puberty and sex talk, and Danny responded saying that she didn't get any of that. Um, Steph, are you serious? Is your dad looking to adopt? Because I will put up my she will put up herself for adoption. So I think that hearing Lise say that is kind of surprising. I mean, to me and to a lot of us, because a lot of us didn't get any kind of puberty or sex talk.
I can't
Um,
wait to get to that part.
yeah, we're gonna hit that. We're gonna come back to that again. Describe one family tradition that you guys had.
Okay, for us, it was more well, my favorite was summer times at grandma's. Summertime, when school's out in May, we
Mm-hmm.
were at grandma's until school opens back up in September. So all my cousins, we were all hunched up, all 12, 15 of us, whoever, like we all just sleep everywhere, hang out. And my grandma loved it. Like you know how grandmas are. It was like the
Mm-hmm.
best I made as a child, hanging out with my cousins the whole summer. And then my second favorite tradition that we did was on the 2nd of January, we celebrated Ancestral Days, Fête des Aïeux.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like almost like Thanksgiving, but January 2nd.
Right.
Big feast, huge feast, and everybody come to our house and just having fellowship and just having a good time and
Mm-hmm.
laughing and cooking over meals. It was great. It was something
Mm-hmm.
that I always look forward to. So
Mm-hmm.
that was mine.
Awesome. My favorite, I think, was having our nightly devotions, which most of the time ended up being times when we were cracking jokes on each other, which is called like the click clack stuff. So
Hmm.
crack, blah blah blah, and then somebody throws in a riddle and trying to solve it, and yeah, we had some interesting times coming up with different jokes and just laughing about stuff.
Yeah.
What role do you feel like you played in your family? And some of the roles that I'm referring to here are the peacemaker, the scapegoat, a problem solver, or the leader.
Um, I, I play a little bit of all of the above, but
Hmm.
mainly I was the peacemaker. Um,
I can see that.
Yeah, I was the peacemaker. I would be the one mustered up all my feelings and emotions and go up to my dad and question why his behavior. Because
Mhm,
you upset it, mom. I don't
mhm,
like it.
mhm,
It hurts me. It hurts my sister.
mhm,
What are you gonna do about it?
mhm.
And trying to bring him to his senses. I would be the one trying to bring it down a notch, or
Keep the peace, right.
yeah. That
Mhm,
was,
mhm. Um, Mine was very interesting because, looking back, I think I was probably a little bit of a problem solver, and the leader, in the sense that I was the kid, who was very mouthy, believe it or not. I was a very mouthy kid, and I was very opinionated. I think I still am very opinionated, and I wasn't afraid to speak my mind. It didn't really matter, like, if I was gonna get yelled at, or, um, if I was gonna get a whooping or whatever. If something was bothering me, if I felt like something wasn't right, then I felt like I needed to say something about it, and I needed to figure out how to solve the problem. Danny says that she's the advocate in her family, pretty much, the lawyer, slash the one who advocates for everybody else. Um, so now we're gonna go into a little bit more specifics about, our parenting, when we were growing up, and some of those patterns. So,
mhm.
um, can you name 3 positive parenting tools that you learned from your parents that you feel like you can pass on to your children and use with them?
Um, I found two, by the way. I'm gonna share them. Uh, a number one thing is respect your elders.
Mhm.
This was a must for
Mhm.
us. If you're in the
Mhm.
street, you see an elder from the church or an elder from somewhere, you better cross that street and go say hello. Because when you
Mhm.
get home, you know there's going to be a phone call waiting for you that you didn't say
Mhm.
hi, or you were malèduqué, not well mannered, and you're
Yep,
going to be like,
and everybody is your auntie and your uncle.
yes,
Ton
ma'am.
tonton whatever, ma tante whatever, bonsoir messieurs, dames, and just kissing
You
it
better kiss
kissing
everybody
everybody
and
on the
their
cheek.
grandma in the room.
Yeah. Oh, man.
I
Mhm.
remember who was when my father came to the States for the first time, and he saw the interaction with his sister kids when they walk in the room. They just say, "Hey, everybody." He was appalled. That meant his jaw dropped, like they didn't come and kiss him on the cheek
Mhm.
personally and greeted him. And I was like,
Mhm.
"That's culture." That's
Yeah,
how it
and even in the Haitian churches, like, after service, oh my gosh, you gotta greet everybody. You gotta kiss everybody on the cheeks, and, just say hi to everybody.
is.
Mhm.
Yeah, that so I'm not that extreme with it, but you're gonna respect whoever is,
Right. Right.
older than you. I expect
Mhm.
my sons when they come across somebody to have, be polite and well mannered, say thank you, hello, good morning, that kind of stuff. So
Mhm.
I instill that in them. And
Mhm.
also,
But before you share, the second one, someone says that these elders are too nosy. She respects them from a distance. That was from Gerlinda.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. I
I
agree.
I agreed. Believe me, I know.
So, Lee says it was so and so, and for so and so, and
Yeah.
that her parents did not require that they kiss everyone, but you had to salute them, so say hi. Well, at least you were lucky because we had to say, and not only say hi to everybody, but give everybody a kiss on the cheeks.
Yeah.
And yeah, that got very weird and odd and annoying a lot of the times. Mm.
Hmm. Yeah,
What's the
and then
you came up with?
yeah, the other part is when you're going to someone's house, have your manners checked at the door. Okay, sit down. Don't you be touching anything. Don't you be running around. Sit down, be seen and not heard. And
Mhm.
I think I'm doing an okay job so far with that because when the
Mhm.
kids will be with my parents, my mom, she would say, your boys are so well behaved. They don't do anything unless I ask them to. They just good." I'm like, they know they're not home, okay? They
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
It's with me. I'm like, they know that's not home. So they,
Mhm.
unless they're
Mhm.
like really cool with you, they're
Mhm.
not gonna, yes, ma'am, yes, whoever, may I
Yep.
please have, and then
Yep.
just there.
Yep.
That.
Yep. Same here too. Um, so I did came up with um, three positive parenting tools that I might want to use with my own children. The first one is working together as a team. So my dad had this analogy that he always used, and he still uses it today. And it was always about how when you have one stick, it's easily breakable. But when you put three sticks together, since there were three of us, when you put three sticks together, it's much harder
Mm,
um, to break the three sticks than it is breaking the one. So that one was definitely one that has served us well, and I do want to continue using that one with my children. The other one was family meetings. Lise mentioned that earlier. That's something that my parents did too, réunion. So even though a lot of the times the meetings ended in very weird ways and they didn't always end on positive notes, I think the essential lesson that I took away from that was that when something was wrong and something was going on, there was room for us to come together to talk about it, to try to come up with a solution. Again, they didn't always end up in positive ways, but that really helped, to let us know that when something is wrong, like I said, you need to figure it out, talk to each other, and try to figure out if there's a way to fix the issue. And then the other one was about responsibility and being independent. And it wasn't really them telling us you have to be responsible like all the time or telling us you have to be an independent person. I think throughout the different things that they did and kind of watching them and learning from some of the experiences that they had, I learned for myself that I needed to be an independent person and I needed to be responsible. All right. Um, Now to the really interesting question that a lot of people don't like talking about, especially within Haitian circles. Can you name three things that you wish your parents did or didn't do when you were growing up?
um, yeah. One thing I wish they had provided a safe environment to be able to express myself
Hmm.
and also be re- received in a positive manner, not brush off my emotions or
Hmm.
what I may be feeling. The most reason I say that, you probably know, I'm very sensitive and I cry,
Hmm.
and my tears were viewed as, I don't I can't think of the exact word I'm looking for here. They were viewed as in something negative. Why,
Hmm.
you're always crying.
Hmm.
Or what they called glory, like
Hmm.
I'm always crying. But I, that's how I express my feelings, anger,
Hmm.
frustration, or my feelings are easily hurt. I wish that they had given me um, feel safe to express that part of me. which as I grew older, I feel like this is the strongest part of me because I feel so deeply.
Mm-hmm.
But as a kid trying to, cultivate that part in you, it was deemed negative. So I wish that was one thing I wish they had give me that and not tell me to suppress it down.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was really hard to, as they're talking to you, you can feel the tears coming and it's like in your throat and you're like trying to, yeah, it was not a good feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, so tears were viewed as weaknesses.
yes,
Um, and Lisa's that part because tears were negative when you cried when you were upset. Mm-hmm.
yes, totally, totally. And it was the most frustrating thing, especially as a teenager, because them hormones are whack.
Mm-hmm.
And you get hurt and you just can't talk about it and then you just suppress those feelings down. It was not a good feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wish we had traveled more around Haiti.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, that's one thing. I wish we did together collectively. Like we travel around the town that we lived in and go on the outskirts of the town. But I wish we had explored together.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I feel like a lot of in the Haitian
So,
culture,
so
we don't have.
spending more time with your family and
Yeah.
doing more fun things.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Which I didn't do that, but I try to do it now.
Right.
Break cycles.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm. Mhm.
oh, and then third thing is I wish that when my parents had this had a really really negative effect on me growing up. I wish that they had kept their private matters to themselves and not include me in it, and I had to
Mhm.
be be the judge and the jury and peacemaker at such a young age, and
Mhm.
also have your feelings you're carrying too as a kid, plus your
Mhm.
parents, plus your dad, plus your mom, and you're all tore up and messed up inside. So that's
Mhm.
one thing I don't put that burden on your kids, whoever's listening, because it's such a heavy burden, and it can also create the feelings of it's your fault
Right.
growing up that it's happening, but it has nothing to do with you. So I had to carry this for a long, long, long time. I wish
Mhm.
that they had realized that this is not a good way.
Okay. Right.
It's not okay to put such a burden on your
Right.
children. Oh
So
my
you in a sense kind of ended up being the third wheel in your parents' relationship.
yeah, it's terrible.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it was not. I wish they didn't do that.
Mhm. Yeah.
And
I want to add a little bit more to what you were saying about the emotional needs and the feelings and all of that, because I really feel like when I was growing up, that was something that I feel like my parents could have done a better job with. And I think that kind of looking at Haitian culture, and this is true for a lot of other cultures too. And I've seen this with a lot of the families that I've worked with, is that sometimes there's a disconnect with parents because they feel like if you're doing okay outwardly, then you shouldn't have any problems inside. So it's
mhm,
if they can look at you and they can see that you're succeeding at whatever you're doing, you have a thriving career, you have a good family, you have a good job, blah, 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 then they did a really great job. And that's kind of where their responsibility ended. And I feel like with parenting, there's more to it than just giving your children the physical stuff. They need
mhm,
emotional things too. And I also see a lot of adult children and parents right now who are continuing to work hard, and they're going after success, and they're going after friendships and relationships because they're trying to fill the emotional need that
mhm.
their parent didn't fill when they were younger. So I really hope that this is something that our generation of parents can really try to break so that we can be present for our children emotionally.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to add that because that was something that I had added on my list as well. I wish that that my parents were a little bit more open to discussing certain topics. So when Lise mentioned that she had the talk about puberty and sex, I was like, what? Like that's not something that was ever talked about in my family. And even now, like we don't talk about it. Like that is just one of the topics that you don't talk about.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Sandra says our culture teaches resilience, pride, and success. I agree with that. Um, Haitian parents have a hard time showing emotions towards their kids. You are supposed to just know that they love you because they take care of you, but they will never say it. And I think
Woo.
that that's an important piece of that too, because in so many families, and again, I don't think that's just specific to Haitian culture. There are a lot of parents who will work hard, you know, they give their children what they need and what they want, but
Yep.
children never hear their parents say I love you. And it's so important for children to hear that from their parents. So I'm glad that Stephanie brought that up and said
Hmm.
the other thing that I added on my list was that I wish that my parents, especially my dad, was more willing and accepting of us having different opinions without them feeling that they were being disrespected and without feeling upset about it. And I think that goes back to the author authoritarian parenting style where you're supposed to just follow orders and not necessarily have opinions about it. And I think that that can be destructive to a lot of children when they feel like they can't have opinions of their own. So I think that when we're raising our children, like they need to know that they can have these conversations with us. And sometimes I like seeing the family as a microcosm for the world. So this is where your children get to practice having different opinions and uh, kind of challenging the order and the status quo and all of that. So we didn't always get that where we could have our own opinions without them being upset and feeling disrespected about it.
Yep.
Oh, so taboos within Haitian culture. So we touched a little bit on the sex talk. What are some other taboos within traditional Haitian circles that you can think of?
Um, Hold up. I wrote it down.
Oh, and
Okay.
to add on about parents showing emotions and saying "I love you," Lee says that she loves that her parents say that they love her every time they speak with her. It was not something that they heard as children, but now as adults they hear it and they feel it.
Oh, that's
Hmm.
amazing. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
That's really awesome. Uh,
Hmm.
Haitian taboos. I hmm, when you get pregnant unplanned or
Hmm.
what they consider early age, your life is over. You
Hmm.
cannot redeem yourself from that. This is it for you. You cannot be anything more. This is it.
Hmm.
This is the you might as well dig a hole and put yourself in it. You
Hmm.
don't, it's over. And I can speak that because it happened to me.
Hmm.
I I got pregnant unplanned at 22.
Hmm.
Reading the news, it was like finiavo, we're
Hmm.
done because this is the ultimate disrespect. And no, we cannot accept that. that was one thing. And then also, um, I'm just speaking from my experience of taboos that I've seen. Also, um, both me and my sister had unplanned pregnancy at 22, 23. It was instant. You got to get married right away. Well, so you don't embarrass the family or something like that. And I'm like, wait a minute, whoa, no. And it was like this big talk of, called the family meeting. It was just so much extraness. Yeah, that's something I want to say your life is not over if you're pregnant at 22. You know, uh, yeah, that was that one thing for me.
Yeah, that's definitely a huge one within the Haitian community, is that if you get pregnant out of wedlock, then it's like, oh, you got to get married, or else like they're cutting you off with everything. And again, talking about sex was definitely taboo. I mean, what I learned about sex and like my body and all of those things and puberty and all of that, I learned from school. And as an adult, I learned it on my own. So it wasn't something that was talked about. Some of the other taboos that I could think of involve dating. So you couldn't date in high school. You had to wait until you finished high school and you
In
got a
college.
degree and you had a good job and you were financially stable before you could date. And I think for a lot of families, there's an assumption that you need to marry the first person that you date. So the whole thing about, oh, I'm gonna date just for fun and just because I want to go out on a date or something, that was not a thing at all. So none of that. And I actually don't even remember having conversations about having healthy relationships and romantic relationships and all of that. So
Not a thing.
those were definitely taboos for us. Um, Danny says, I was told on my 18th birthday that I should use protection because I can get pregnant. Um, Stephanie says, Haitian parents' version of the sex talk is don't do it, don't talk about it. It's a bit. So,
Totally agree.
yeah, it's like, no, you don't talk about it at all. And then I think as part of that, there's this other assumption that if you date without being ready financially, and if you get pregnant out of wedlock, and if you have sex before you're married, those things were like immortal sins that
Mm,
um, you could never get redeemed for, and you could probably end up going to hell because of it.
yep.
How were you disciplined as a child?
Um, it was because I have an authoritarian parent. It
Mhm,
was very, very harsh. Um, very severe. Um, the the matinette or the tonton bef, like the twisted cow thingy. Woo, leave wealth
mhm,
on your back.
mhm,
Um, yeah. Even if I would say I'm sorry, forgive me, you don't get a do over. It was just
mhm,
punishment right away.
mhm.
Certain things.
For our viewers who don't speak Creole, I want to say that the baton or tonton macoute was basically um, like if I remember correctly, it was like these ropes tied together, like really, really rough ropes tied together in like three branches
Yeah.
that Haitian parents used a lot to spank their children.
No, I call it beating.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, But yeah, it was
Yeah,
that.
'cause I mean, a lot of the times that's what it was. It was a beating. It was a
Yeah.
whooping.
Or in my case, write lines of whatever the punishment was. I will never do. And then
Mhm,
by the time you're done, you're getting on your back as you're
mhm,
writing, or be on
mhm.
your knees for hours.
À genoux.
Whenever they tell you to get up, that's when you get up.
Mhm. Yeah, so their timeout consisted of you, um, sitting on your knees on a concrete floor
Man,
for hours until, they got into a better mood or something.
yeah,
Mhm.
that was the uh, or sometimes um when oh, I gotta be careful. I'm not bashing my parents at all or anything. I'm just saying what happened.
Mhm.
He would backslap,
Mhm.
talk back, or try
Mhm.
to wait a minute, try to justify the situation. That I'm baffled, oh, God, Lord. Before you know it, yeah, it happened. Those were
Mhm.
cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, so those were the manners at my home.
Yeah, my dad had this thing about pinching us. Like if if you did something that this man didn't like he would just come up in here and like zongleo, like pinch you. And it was like, uh,
Yeah,
okay. But we had that spankings with forget. Oh, so one of the things that they like doing, and I think for a lot of Haitian parents, is that they would tell you to go get your fret. So the fret was basically what you wanted them to use to spank you. So you had to go choose, and sometimes like if you would bring something that was very light, it was like, mm-mm, you gotta go and pick something else and bring something that they can use to actually like hurt you and make you feel it. Um, I I didn't get spanked a lot when I was growing up. I think it was probably because like I was so stubborn and so mouthy, and I was just like, nope, you're not spanking me today because I didn't do anything wrong. So, of course, I would get in trouble because I would be the kid saying that, "No, like, you don't have any reason to be spanking me right now," and that turned into, a whole altercation back and forth of me being disrespectful and blah, 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 and all of
right.
that. I do remember one time, though, that my mom spanked me, and I think it was the only time that I ever got spanked. I was in the 6th grade, and I got into a fight with another student on the way home, and I was a pretty angry kid, I think, and I just beat the crap out of that kid. So I got home, and before I even got home, someone had already told my mom that I'm on the streets fighting with a kid. So by the time I got home, she was waiting for me with this cord. I think it was like those old like white plastic handcuffs that they used to use. Don't ask me why they had handcuffs at the house, but she she did. So that's what was waiting for me, and I got a really bad whooping. I actually still have a scar on my leg from that time. And I remember a couple years ago, I showed it to my mom and I was like, "Do you remember when that happened?" And she was like, "No, what was this from?" And I was telling her, and she was like, "No, I never did that to you. I never spanked you." And I was like, yeah, you did. Do you remember when this happened?" And then, she was just like, "Oh my gosh, like, I'm so sorry, like, I didn't mean to hurt you, like, I was just trying to discipline you," and all of that. But I think that that's what a lot of, Haitian parents resort to is to just spank their kids, which I mean, I think punishment would be a topic for a different day, but in general, I don't think that corporal punishment works because if the child cannot connect why they're being spanked to why what they did was wrong, then there's a disconnect there. But yeah, that was definitely very interesting. Um, Ben says most of my childhood was spent with my grandfather. He would spank you. He would spank you and make fun of you afterwards. And yeah, I could actually see that happening. Um, Danny says she got all the spanking on her own, and regardless of if she initiated the problem or not. Haitian parents have short memories. Oh wait, they have no memory. And yeah, I think that's true because sometimes they're just like, oh, I did that like when, and it's like, actually, you did.
I think it's guilt sometimes. They don't want to face that and they feel sorry,
Yeah, for sure.
but
Um,
won't admit it.
yeah. That's always interesting. What are some of the dynamics of the parent relationships um, that you would like to change with your children when they're older?
Um, I teach my kids at an early age what boundaries are.
Mm,
Um,
boundaries, yes.
those are big for me. I have to have my
Mhm,
boundaries. Even with, I have two boys. One's 9, the other one is 3. Little one likes to touch big brother stuff, and I
mhm,
would tell him you have to respect your brother's stuff. If he doesn't want you to touch it or play with it, you can't do it. You have to that's his stuff. You need to respect that. Vice versa. And
mhm,
you know, even with if they're interacting, you will see, can I ask or can I have or may I?
mhm.
I because it works and it creates less tension and
Right.
fighting. Always fights all the time. So I'm teaching them to respect each
Mhm,
other's privacy and that invisible line. Um, Whereas with my parents, mostly my mom, um, boundary is like a foreign language, a foreign concept. As a growing up, they still view you as this child and
mhm.
talk to you in that manner.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, go
I
ahead.
wanted to bring in a comment from Sandra. She says, all joking aside, um, recognizing the culture, the negative approach to how we were raised should motivate us to do better with our children and not perpetuate those same negative learned behaviors. And I totally agree.
Yeah,
Mhm.
most definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you can go on.
no, I was just saying it's really difficult for my mom specifically to realize that you can't talk to me that way, or
Mhm.
there's a certain way I would like for you to approach me when you're addressing me or addressing how I do things in my home or how I raise my family, or if it differ from how you do it, I need you to respect my decision and not go behind me, especially when it comes with the kids.
Mhm.
Those are big things. But you know, progressively she's learning. It's not
Mhm.
something that, you know, she's not used to that. So
Mhm.
boundaries are a big thing in our home. And whoever comes in, I let them know those are the lines. Please respect
Right.
them. Nothing
Right.
ill or anything.
Mhm. Yeah, and this is the same thing that I jotted down in my notes. A lot of the times when I work with parents and like family therapy or doing family coaching and teaching parents parenting skills and whatnot, one of the things that I always encourage them to do is to raise the kind of children they would want to have as adult friends. And so for me, what that means for me is that when my daughter becomes an adult, I want to be able to have the kind of relationship with her where she can come to me and talk to me
Mhm.
about anything, and I can view her as an adult at that point. Because
Right.
again, there was a comment about how we are basically children until the day we die, and I think that that's a real disservice when it comes to having healthy relationships with our parents as
Yeah.
adults, because you're always seen as that little kid that you were 30, 35, 40 years ago. And the fact of the matter is that now you're an adult with your your own family, raising your own children, and they still don't see it that way. And to add a little bit onto that, it's also the idea of you always having to call your parents because they're the grown one, they're your parent.
Mhm.
And so if you don't call them, they don't call you because they're waiting for you as the child to be the one who's always checking in. And sometimes it's like, come on, like you can give me a call too. Like if you don't hear from me, maybe something's wrong. Maybe I'm not okay. You
Yeah.
can check in on me too, so we can keep that relationship going. So I feel like a lot of the times, like, that two-way relationship isn't there, and for me as a parent, I want to break that pattern. I want to be the parent when I'm, like, in my 60s, 70s, whatever, that I can pick up the phone and call my children and check in with them and be like, "Hey, how are things going? What's up?" Instead of waiting for them to be the ones calling me. So that's one of the ones that is really, really big for me that it it irks me a lot, and I really want to change that one. Um, we already talked about some of the family traditions. What are some things as a teenager you would have wished that your parents did when you were going through something difficult?
Um, it's going back to creating this safe environment for me to be able to express myself,
Mhm,
um, and be able to um, give value to the little things that I'm
mhm,
going through, not brush it off like
mhm,
it's nothing.
mhm,
Or better yet, not overreacting when I'm having teenage like behaviors, rather
mhm.
than um calling it, like, rather than making it like a big deal about
Right.
it. Talk to me what it is that I'm doing,
Mhm.
um and help me understand that this kind of behavior, rather
Right.
than calling everybody and their mama on the phone. My daughter is X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
Then everybody in the family has this notion about who I am, the
And
troublings I'm
everybody
doing.
knows your business. Mhm.
Yes. And to this day, my family, some like extended, they view me as this kid
Mhm.
from teenage years that my father presented when I was going through
Mhm.
those tough teenage
Mhm.
rebellious years.
Mhm.
Okay. I wish it was understood, okay, this is how we're gonna do this behavior, blah blah blah, let's talk it through, uh,
Mhm.
let's have a healthier approach. But again, like I said, they couldn't give me what they didn't have, so
Mhm. Mhm.
um I don't hold them against them, so
Yeah,
yeah.
and I think that that's a very good point that you made here, because when we're looking at families and parenting, I think it's important to look at it as a generational system. So
Mhm.
what our parents taught us and how they raised us is what they learned from their parents, and their parents learned it from their parents, and so on and so forth. So when we look at the environment and the context in which they were raised. I mean, they did the best that they could. They gave us what they had. So I think
Yes.
that now for us, and in having this conversation, what I'm hoping that a lot of people will take away from that is that we can change these patterns. We don't have to repeat the negative things that our parents did and the negative things that they taught us, because that's how we break cycles. We break
Yes.
cycles by identifying them, we talk about it, and we figure out how to do better. For me, what I wish that my parents would have done when I was going through a difficult time as a teenager, kind of similar to yours. I kind of wish they would have even asked, like, "Do you want to talk about it?" Because I think that as a parent, when you ask your child, "Do you want to talk about it?" you do three things for them. First, you tell your child that you see them and that you see that
Mhm.
they're going through something. Second, you're telling them that I'm willing to listen. So I'm asking you if you want to talk about it because I want to listen. I want to hear what's going on for you. And I think that the third thing that it does is that it gives the child a choice of whether they want to talk about it or not. And so when you tell your child that, that's a choice. They can decide now if they want to talk to you about it or not, but at least you gave them that choice, and they
Right.
know if I ever need to talk about something, mom and dad not only see me, not only are they willing to listen, but it's a choice. Like, I can talk to them if I
Mm.
want to. And I think that most kids eventually will accept the offer. Like, they'll seek out their parents so they can talk to them. So that's something that for me and my parenting that I want to change. Um
Yep.
and we talked a little bit about gender roles already, but I want to touch on that again for just a little bit. Do you feel like you and your sister were treated differently?
Yes.
And
Being
do you feel like you were treated differently based on your gender, or was it something else? Because you were both the same gender. You were both
well,
girls. So.
it was for something else, but gender wise, we only had cousins coming in the home.
Mhm.
Um, but they were like brothers to us because they, you know how
Mhm.
family are in Haiti. But they definitely were treated differently than us. They get the better portion. They get
Mhm.
the bigger sizes in whatever food,
Mhm.
drink, whatever may have you. They have the best privilege.
Mhm.
To they can go out and be hang out with their friends. Whereas me, no, you can't go because you're gonna go out and talk to boys. That was the
Yeah,
thing.
and
I
and
hated that.
and they can be boys and date and have girlfriends and do all of
Yes.
that, but you as a girl, you can't. And I think there was a comment about that in terms of like as a girl, like the more relationships that you have, like the more boyfriends that you have, it's kind of like um that's taking something away from you, like
Your
taking away
value.
your value and your honor and stuff like that.
Yeah, my mom told me once, female is like money, like cash.
Mm,
The more it goes from hand to hand, the less valuable it is. Like it
hmm,
wears out,
mhm,
and it's stuck with me till to this day.
mhm.
It's something that's like it was like wired inside of
Mhm.
me, and it affected my dating.
The words that we tell our children matter, and I think that what we tell them a lot of the times is more impactful than what we give them.
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah, and I talked a little bit about some of the experiences that I had in terms of um, like my parents treating me differently than my brothers. I think it was more in terms of like what they could do and then things that I couldn't do. But over time, I think that they kind of just let go of that because they realized, that I'm gonna do what I want to do. So, um, and then this brings us into the conversation about careers that we started talking about earlier. Um, was your career of choice influenced or supported by your parents?
Well, sadly, when I went to school, my career of choice was not mine. It was already predetermined by my parents. I need to be in the medical field. You have to be a nurse, a doctor, so on.
Mm-hmm.
And um, I chose psychology,
Mm-hmm.
and he did not support it and stopped
Mm-hmm.
paying for my school.
Mm-hmm.
So those that goes back with being the authoritarian parent.
Mm-hmm.
What I say goes, and if not my way or the highway type
Mm-hmm.
of mentality. But yeah, that was that for me.
Mm-hmm.
That's not what he wanted me to be, so therefore he's out.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Ours was a little bit different. I think that our parents, especially my dad, always kind of wanted to have like some kind of doctor in the family, somebody like in the medical field.
Hmm.
And again, within Haitian households, I don't think that we and our parents got the chance to be exposed to other career fields besides
Hmm.
medicine, law, and engineering. So a lot of them push one of these fields. So um, for us, it was more when you decided to do something, when you decided to pursue a specific career field, you needed it to stick with it.
Yeah.
So there wasn't necessarily room to change your mind. And I think that when they got a hold of like, okay, you want to be a doctor, then you want to be a doctor. Like if that's what they want you um, to be, you can't change that. And if
Hmm.
you change that and you decide, well, I actually want to be something else, then it's like, but you're going to be a doctor too, right?
Right.
Um, and so when I decided to go into the mental health field, it was interesting because, again, because of our culture, mental health is not something that is talked about.
It doesn't
So
exist.
right. We don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about emotional problems. We don't talk about mental health difficulties. So even now to this day, I have a hard time explaining to my parents what it is that I do
Hmm.
and explaining to them, that mental health issues are not just something that we can get on our knees and pray about. Yes,
Hmm.
I believe in prayer, but we also need to follow that with action. So it's hard to explain what these things are, but overall, I feel like they have supported my choice, and it's just for them. I think it's about doing what you do well. Like I said
Hmm.
before, so I've committed to be in the mental health field. So they want me to do that well and be the best that I can be in that particular field. And then going back to the gender roles, Sandra made a point that I think is very important for all of us to remember is that birth order and gender are major factors in Haitian household dynamics, and that's true in any family system. and that she says she also believes that where your parents were in life, as far as age and experiences, played a major role in how they treated the kids, and I think that's true too. And I think that's why it is so important for us, this generation, that we recognize these patterns so we can break them and not continue
Mhm.
to repeat them. And then my final question as we come to a close with this discussion is, can you think about some of the unwritten rules of your family and give some examples of them?
Um, let's see. I have my notes. I lost them, but I'll go by what I remembered. Um, Unwritten rules. It was to me, don't
Mm-hmm.
don't talk about the family affairs to other people. Like, you don't do that. That's
Mm-hmm.
not something that you do. Um, Also, the suffer in silence thing. Like if something is bothering you, you deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of aspect. There's not like you don't talk about you hurting about your feelings, or it's not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
You
So
you don't.
this kind of goes back to the mental health topic and talking about emotional difficulties. Steph says there are no mental health difficulties in Haitian culture. To them, there is nothing that a good baton or a good prière can't fix. Meanwhile,
Yes,
so many
ma'am.
of them are suffering and struggling with things that are treatable. Sandra, interesting enough, my parents both served and worked in the human services and education fields, yet they discouraged it for both myself and B because it did not pay well. So that's another factor as well.
Yeah.
Mm,
Those were the things that were they didn't say it, but you can sense you don't talk to
mhm.
us about what you're feeling. There could never be anything wrong with you. So
Right,
that
right. And it was a, a lot of like ou manger, ou gen rad pou mette, what do you have to complain about? So you eat well, you have clothes to wear, your physical needs are taken care of. So what do you mean you have emotions about this? And
mm-hmm.
things like depression and anxiety and a lot of the other major mental health difficulties and challenges, these things aren't recognized within Haitian circles because I think it's for the same reason. Like your physical needs are met, why do you have mental health challenges?
Yeah.
Um, so I had that as an unwritten rule as well. You don't talk about family secrets. Uh, you don't talk about family issues, period. So if something happened in the family, it stayed in the family. You can't talk about it because it's going to be an embarrassment or something like that. And then when it came to dating, there was basically this unwritten rule that whoever we dated was going to be approved by our parents before we could date the person. So this one is still very interesting to me.
Yeah. I
Um,
got one of those too.
mhm, mhm. So as we close this conversation, w- what do you think? And I'm asking our viewers as well. What do you guys think can be some takeaways from this conversation? How do we move forward in terms of breaking patterns and doing things differently with our own children?
Well, I'll go ahead and go. To
Mhm.
me, because my emotions were severely suppressed in the home growing up, I make sure that my kids have a safe place in our home to be able to come to me and tell me I'm upset, I'm mad,
Mhm.
I'm happy. I will take time, especially I have a school age child.
Mhm.
When he comes home, tell me about school. What is one interesting thing that happened today
Mhm.
in school? Tell me more. What's your favorite thing about school? That way
Mhm.
I'm picking his brain. If he had a bad day, because kids do have bad
Mhm.
days,
Oh
and
yeah.
if you don't ask him, they're not going to tell you.
Right. Right.
So now my son has a habit of telling me I have a horrible day. What
Mhm.
happened? Well, my friend X, Y, and Z.
Mhm.
Or I had a great day. What was so good about
Mhm.
that day? And then he'll tell me.
Mhm.
So this is very important to me. The emotional status of my children is top priority
Mhm.
because I know the negative impact it had on me, how I need
Mhm.
as I got older to decipher those negative,
Mhm.
heal
Right.
from it.
Right.
It's so vital that
Mhm.
I want them to be able to come and express to me exactly what it is that they're feeling.
Mhm.
So if they need extra help, I can get it at as early as possible. Or if I need to change something the way I'm
Right.
approaching, um, both Dad and I, we can do that.
Mhm.
Um, to the point, my 3-year-old can come to me and tell me, "Mommy, I'm so happy." That make my heart, I don't know, like I
Mhm.
could cry about it. For him to tell
Mhm.
me I'm happy,
Mhm.
Mommy, I love you, Mommy,
Mhm.
I'm mad today. Well, what is wrong?
Mhm.
Like he can pinpoint his emotions and
Mhm.
what he's feeling at 3. This is like the greatest trophy because I didn't
Mhm.
have that, and to see that
Mhm.
they can
Mhm.
do that is so important to me, that
Mhm.
they have a safe place to be a kid and
Right.
to be able to be mad and to be able to show frustration. And I tell my kids their home is the place they can feel and say
Mhm.
anything, because when you go out in the world it's so cruel. You can be
Right.
yourself. You just take the layer off.
Right.
Let's
Right.
talk.
Absolutely.
So it
I love that, and I want to say kudos to you for being able to identify what you didn't like about your own upbringing and changing that. And that
yeah,
goes along with what Dani says. She says we have to identify where our parents missed the mark and make a decision to do things that did not benefit you differently.
yeah,
Um, so I think that that's very, very, very important in order for us to move forward and break
yeah,
patterns. And um, a few things that I can add to that is that whoever's watching this during the replay, um, if you recognize that there are dysfunctional patterns that are showing up in your parenting of your own children, it's important to get professional help to assist with addressing these things because a lot of the times, and I have seen this in working with families, which I love doing. I've seen it where a lot of the parents' childhood trauma are coming up, and they're impacting
mhm,
the way that they're parenting their children now. So if there's a dysfunctional pattern that's showing up and you don't like it, you have a lot of triggers, um, be sure to seek professional help for that. It's okay to go to therapy. Therapy is amazing. Um, if you don't need therapy, but you still feel like you need some kind of support and some kind of help in learning how to parent your children better, family coaching is an option. And once Thrive Unburdened services go live later on in the fall. Family therapy and family coaching are services that we will be offering. So if you're watching this, follow the page, stay up to date with what's going on. But that's the biggest thing that I would recommend to people watching this is seek professional help if you need it. It's okay.
yeah,
Um, the other thing is that if you've been hurt deeply by your parents, don't wait for them to come around to admit their fault and to ask you for your forgiveness before you start working on your own healing. Because the thing is, you might end up waiting for a while for something that may never happen. And if it does happen, it might be too late. So start working on your stuff now. Don't wait for your parents to admit that they hurt you as a child. A lot of the times they won't even recognize that they hurt you as a child. So start working on your stuff now. And then to bring in some of the comments, Steph says, I think that as much as we laughed here about the silly things that our parents did or things that we feel were wrong, we have to first acknowledge that they did a fantastic job with what they knew. And that is absolutely true. Our jobs now is to do better. Understand that emotions need to be a part of raising kids. Tell your kids you love them and listen to them sometimes instead of always talking at them. You get involved in your kids' emotions and don't just settle for giving them what they need to survive only. That is very well said.
Yes.
Very well said. And Sandra says we can exceed what our parents did if we recognize that every child has their own emotional needs. As parents, we must provide that safe space. We cannot compare one child with another.
Totally.
Right on point. Right on point. So is there anything else that you feel like you want to add before we end this live session today?
Well, I feel like the viewers did great, chiming in and participating. I love to hear the comments and and I feel like they were right there with us in the chat. So that was amazing. I love that. And yeah, like back to what Stephanie said, I've realized too, as I got older, not to resent my parents from what I wish they could have done. And I realized looking back, they were pouring into me from a vessel that their parents poured into them. So they couldn't give me what they never had.
Exactly.
So how could I be upset or feel like they could have done better when they didn't have that?
Exactly.
But me, now I'm picking up the baton. Now I know better. I got to do better. Take what I can from my parents and also what I know now, pass it on to my kids.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well,
this was such an amazing conversation. I just want to thank you again, Millie, for joining me this afternoon. And I want to say thank you to our viewers for chiming in and you being transparent and you just talking with us made this so much better. I actually can't believe that we were on here for two hours, but this was so good. So thank you so much, Mildred. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back again next Saturday. So be sure to tune in, and I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Bye, Millie.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.